Exposed, 8 sinister true Appalachian Mountain horror tales that haunt the unexplained. The Appalachian Mountains, a place steeped in secrecy and shadows. Whispers curl like mist through the trees. Some say these woods are alive, holding dark secrets that devour unsuspecting souls. When Sarah moved back to her family's old farmhouse with her son Ethan, she traded the city's chaos for the haunting beauty of the mountains. But with each unpacked box, the unease seeped in, heavier than the fog that clung to the ground. The town seemed picturesque at first, with its quaint shops and friendly faces. But just under the surface, an unsettling charm blurred the line between welcoming and wary. The locals looked at them with smiling eyes, but Sarah felt the tension like fingers trailing down her spine. It was as if they were screening her, their kindness prickling with something darker behind it. Ethan, restless as the wind, began wandering the woods, collecting strange objects like he was drawn to something unseen. His stories of shadowy figures lurking just out of sight chilled her to the bone. At night, the farmhouse creaked and groaned, noises that only deepened Sarah's dread. Shadows flitted past windows, and whispers echoed through the trees, as if the forest itself were alive and watching. She tried to focus on family dinners and cozy movie nights by the fireplace, but the knot in her stomach tightened with each passing day. Then Ethan came running, wild-eyed and breathless, about a cabin deep in the woods. A decrepit structure, he claimed, covered in vines, a secret place that called to him during his nighttime escapades. Sarah felt a chill run through her. She had always dismissed his tales, attributing them to teenage anxiety, but uncertainty festered like a wound. Old newspaper clippings began appearing, left on their kitchen table faded articles of vanished children, strange symbols that told haunting stories of families erased from the town's history. The patterns danced in her mind, pieces of a puzzle she couldn't comprehend. They were all warning bells, but she was too overwhelmed with dread to pay heed. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. One fateful evening, after returning home from a community school event, Sarah turns to find Ethan missing, panic crashing over her like a tidal wave. She yells his name, heart racing, throat dry. The friendly neighbors gather to help, their smiles seem tight around the edges now. A sense of dread grips her. Why were they so eager to help? Panic spilled into her gut like poison. Were they supposed to trust these smiling faces when their kindness now felt like chains, binding Ethan to this dark fate? The sun dips below the horizon, plunging the world into a stifling gloom. An oppressive silence blankets the woods. Alone, she feels the dark pull of the forest calling her name, whispers weaving through the brambles, promising secrets long buried. With each breath, dread mounts, time slipping away. Would she find Ethan before another soul vanished into the shadows forever? The realization begins to sink in, sharper than any knife. The town was hiding something sinister, and now she was becoming part of its dark narrative. What would happen when dawn broke? Would she find her son, or would she join him among the spirits that roam the cursed woods? The moon hung high, a silver ghost illuminating the path ahead. Sarah stepped into the woods, heart pounding like a drum in the stillness. Twilight encroached, shadows stretching and bending as if alive. She called Ethan's name again, her voice echoing in desperation, swallowed by the trees. Each crack of a twig beneath her feet made her flinch. The gnawing fear churned in her stomach. The more she searched, the more terror seeped into her bones. What if he was lost, really lost? What if he had fallen victim to whatever loomed in these woods, hidden and hungry? The more she pressed forward, the more the underbrush seemed to whisper her son's name, almost taunting her. Branches clawed at her clothes, pulling her back, reminding her of the stories shared in hushed voices, the ones she had managed to shake off. She should have listened. The townsfolk might have been smiling, but they were watching, lurking with warm eyes that veiled something dark, something that thrived in the shadows. A rustle, sudden and sharp, halted her thoughts. The stillness returned, suffocating. Sarah's eyes darted around, searching for movement. Had she heard him? A child's laughter. It felt like a memory, bright and innocent against the dense darkness that was now her reality. Steeling herself, she pushed deeper into the woods, each step feeling like an unanswered prayer. Then it hit her, the smell. A sickly sweet rot invaded her senses. She gagged but pressed on. The air around her felt thick and heavy, saturated with dread. That's when she spotted it, the cabin. Ethan had described it vividly, and fear coiled tightly in Sarah's chest as she approached. The cabin stood like a corpse, sagging and decayed, swallowed by nature's grip. Vines snaked across its weathered wood, and windows were dark voids. Her instincts screamed at her to leave, to turn and run. But Ethan was inside. He had to be. Ethan. She shouted again, her voice trembling. She stepped closer, the door creaking softly as if welcoming her into its mouth. Hesitating, she reached out, fingers trembling against the splintered wood. With a forceful shove, the door swung open, revealing a darkened space within. A chill ran through her as shadows danced on the walls, remnants of things best left undisturbed. In the dim light, she glimpsed paintings on the walls, strange symbols, twisted faces, and what appeared to be children intertwined with trees, sculptures of terror preserved in darkness, and below them, little piles of dirt, like crude graves for unclaimed souls. Her breath hitched as the air thickened, constricting around her. Then she heard it. Soft, muttering voices, overlapping like a chorus of lost children. Sarah stepped further inside, heart racing. The whispers grew louder, more distinct. Help us, they pleaded. A cold realization struck her. Was she too late? Had Ethan already succumbed to the whispers, already drawn into the dark promise of the woods? The sensation of being watched crept back, prickling at her neck. Ethan. She cried louder, desperation dripping from her voice. The voices faded and shifted, the walls seemed to lean in closer. Panic clawed at her throat. She turned, looking for any sign of him. Ethan. Please. And then silence. The air went dead, as if the cabin itself held its breath. Just as she was about to turn back, something moved in the corner of her eye. A shadow, swift and small, darting out of view. It was then that she felt the chill wrap around her, a new presence. What are you doing here? A voice hissed behind her. Sarah turned, eyes wide, heart slamming against her ribs. A figure emerged from the gloom, a child, but not just any child. His eyes were empty, sunken, pleading. You shouldn't have come. What did you do to Ethan? She gasped, stepping back, her instincts screaming at her to flee, but beyond the boy, shadows danced and shifted, twisting into shapes that seemed to surround her. A chilling realization wrapped around her heart. The town had indeed been hiding something far darker than she ever imagined. With nowhere left to run, Sarah braced herself, the weight of the moment settling like a leaden blanket. Ethan. She cried again, mind racing. Could it be true? Had the town turned its back on innocent lives to feed the very darkness that haunted these woods? As she felt the breath of cold wind against her skin, she turned to face the boy, his lips curling into a smile that promised nothing but dread. The darkness deepened, swallowing her whole as she whispered, "What is happening here?" And the boy simply replied, "You'll see." What lay ahead was beyond her comprehension, the forest hungry for a new tale to whisper in the wind. The boy's smile twisted Sarah's gut into knots. Fear radiated off her skin like a static charge, filling the air with dread. "You have to help me. Where's Ethan?" She stepped forward, desperation making her bold, but the boy only tilted his head, the darkness revealing more of his gaunt features. "He's not yours anymore," he whispered, his voice slipping through the air like a wisp of fog. "The forest chose him." The words wrapped around Sarah, squeezing her heart with a vice grip. "No," she gasped, stepping back, trying to deny the terrible truth. I won't let that happen. She whipped around, desperate to search the corners of the room for her son, but shadows sprawled across the floor, clawing towards her like hungry hands. Help us! The whispers intensified, swirling around her, suffocating. Bring him to us! They grew louder, a cacophony pressing in on her, crawling into her ears. Sarah clutched her head, fighting against the onslaught, her world spiraling. Stop it! Where is he? She screamed out. A shudder rippled through the cabin as the boy's smile morphed into something sharp, jagged. You really think you can save him? He taunted, stepping closer. The boy seemed to elongate, shadows falling from him like dead leaves, creating a grotesque picture framed by the dim light. You'll have to make a choice. Your choice will define who you are. Choice. Sarah echoed, heart racing, her mind a storm. What choice? In that moment, Ethan's soft laughter filled the air, chilling her bones. It was closer now, echoing from deep within the shadows beyond the cabin walls. Mommy. The sound rang sweet yet hollow, a melodic lure that twisted the blade of her fear deeper. Ethan. She cried again, and with a surge of determination, Sarah sprinted towards the sound. She ripped past the boy, who laughed softly, his laughter dissolving into the whispers of the forest. She burst through the back door into the yard, breathless. The foliage loomed dark and thick, branches like skeletal fingers beckoning her into the night. Ethan. She shouted, voice cracking. The breath of the woods surrounded her, rustling the leaves like sinister whispers. It felt alive, watching, waiting. She turned in circles, hoping to see him, praying that he would materialize beside her, unaware of the terror that lurked in the shadows. But the darkness swallowed everything, and the woods mocked her cries. She caught glimpses of movement just beyond the tree line. The laughter echoed again, clearer, drawing her deeper. With every step forward, an unnatural chill rippled through her. The trees groaned as if alive, bending to structure an unholy path. Did the forest want her to follow? As she ventured further, a figure materialized, small and fleeting, as though caught in the corner of her eye. Heart racing, she dashed forward, clawing at the darkness in frantic search for her son. No. Ethan. She screamed, pushing through the thicket, thorns tearing at her skin, but she was numb to the pain. Then, silence. The dreadful quiet hit her like a wall. The kind of silence that presses down on your soul, amplifying the echo of your own heartbeat. Out of the stillness, she heard a soft whimper. Mommy. It was faint, coming from a grove ahead. She staggered forward, fighting desperately through the thickening underbrush until she stumbled into a clearing. At the center stood a gnarled tree, roots twisting like broken fingers. At its base lay a mound, a pile of soil that seemed unnatural among the rest of the forest floor. And beside it, a shadow. A shape, all too familiar, hunched and still. Ethan. She gasped, lungs burning with a blend of hope and dread. But as she closed the distance, realization struck like a whip. It wasn't Ethan, but something wrong. The boy from the cabin appeared at her shoulder, dark smile widening, mouth edging into a grin. Time to choose, he whispered, and the ground trembled as the shadows morphed into figures, a crowd of lost children, eyes hollow, gazes pleading. Which will you save? In that moment, the air thickened, suffocating. Sarah's heart lurched as fear shattered her resolve. Would the forest demand a sacrifice? A choice made in despair. She could feel the weight of the woods, the pull of unseen forces tightening around her neck. What have you done? She gasped, the ground trembling as laughter rose from the trees. As shadows danced and the whispers crescendoed, she realized the dire implications of their sinister invitation. Would her love for Ethan lead her into the grasp of a darkness impossible to escape? And there, at the edge of the clearing, the trees seemed to shift. Sarah braced herself, heart pounding, as the shadows closed in. Choose, the boy hissed, pressing in around her. A choice loomed ahead, cruel and grotesque, a decision that could shatter everything. She had to act. As the darkness crept close, she gripped the soil, sweat mingling with fear. What will it be? Whispered the chorus of lost souls. She took a breath. The truth hung heavy in the air. Would she choose to fight, to save her son, even if it meant losing herself? The forest waited hungrily for her answer. And just then, the ground beneath her shifted with a sinister growl. A shudder raced through the clearing, quaking the ground and igniting a primal fear inside Sarah. The chilling laughter swirled, echoing in her bones as she felt the darkness tighten around her throat like a noose. "I can't," she whimpered, her eyes darting between the pleading faces of lost children and the empty space where Ethan should be. "Choose," the boy demanded, his grin grotesquely wide. "Choose, or they will all be lost." The shadowy figures pressed closer, their hollow eyes full of despair. She could see their tiny mouths moving, whispering the same haunting plea, save us, save us." Her heart thudded against her ribcage as panic surged through her veins. "No. I want to choose." Sarah gasped, desperation clawing at her throat. But the reality crashed down on her. The forest demanded a payment, and time was slipping through her fingers like water. Suddenly, a rush of wind whipped through the clearing. The trees shrieked, their branches contorting, and the gnarled roots wrenched free from the soil, stretching towards Sarah with a ravenous hunger. She felt the ground pulse beneath her feet, as if the forest was alive and breathing, intent on swallowing her whole. From the shadows, a figure broke free, a fleeting glimpse of a boy, barefoot, hair wild and dirty. It was Ethan. "Mommy!" he cried, his voice trembling, echoing across the clearing. A mixture of hope and horror flooded her heart. "What do you want from me?" she shouted, looking into the boy's eyes, terrified at what she might find there. The other children drew back slightly, watching with wide, empty eyes, as if they already knew the answer. The boy in the shadows slid closer, his grin never wavering. "You know what to do. But can you live with it?" Time sizzled, and Sarah felt the weight of a deadline pressing down on her. Ethan's laughter faded to a mere echo, drifting in the wind. "Ethan, please. Don't leave me," she screamed, her voice cracking. But he was fading, pulled back into the murk of the trees. "Save one," the chorus whispered, voices merging into a chilling chorus that wrapped around her. "Save your son, or save us." She looked around, heart racing, at the children staring up at her. Their eyes beseeching. I can't." She dropped to her knees, the soil caving beneath her weight, her fingers trembling against the cold earth. "Choose." The boy's voice rose above the others, sharp and cutting. "Or they will all languish in this place forever." The ground beneath Sarah shifted again, grotesque shapes of twisted roots and soil rising like a frenzied tide. Her thoughts whirled chaotically. What kind of choice was this? What kind of monster had she stumbled upon? "Please," she gasped, reaching out towards the lost souls. "Please. I'll save you." But even as she spoke, a dreadful dread coiled tight within her. From the distance, a cry resonated, a haunting sound, echoing the fear that was rapidly taking root in her heart. "Mommy!" It grew distant, fading into the night, and Sarah felt the weight of her decision pushing down on her, threatening to crush her. "Choose," the boy whispered, every syllable a knife. The tension hung thick like fog, wrapping around her like a shroud. She could almost taste the bitter air of despair, and then it struck her, the sinister intention of the forest. If she chose Ethan, would she damn the others? What if the cost was too high? The shadows loomed larger, hungry, and relentless. Suddenly, the ground erupted beneath her like a volcano, roots clawing at her legs. She stumbled back, feeling herself slipping. The whispers turned urgent, desperate. And then, from the depths, she heard something else, guttural, a growl from the darkness. "Time's running out." The boy sneered, the glint of mischief in his eyes now tinged with menace. With a jolt, she realized the choice wasn't just hers, it was the forest's wicked game. Would she seal their fates in darkness or attempt to save the flickering light of her son? Sweat trickled down her brow as the shadows lunged forward, closing in around her, and Sarah had to decide before the darkness consumed them all. And in that harrowing moment, the ground heaved again, lightening to reveal to her horror what lay beneath. Could this be the truth that would finally break her? What do I do? She gasped, vision blurring as the shadows responded with a shattering laugh. The ground churned wildly beneath Sarah as she gasped, her lungs fighting for every breath. The shadows pressed tighter, their cold fingers gripping her like tendrils of a nightmare. Panic surged from her chest, choking her heart. The echoes of that shattering laugh hung thick in the air, taunting her. What lies beneath? Her mind raced, memories flashing of tales told in hushed whispers, the foreboding warnings of the elders back home. The forest was alive. It was a predator, and she was its prey. Mommy. Ethan's voice pierced the darkness again, a fragile spark in the cold void. Desperation clawed at her heart, blending with the dread that thrummed in her veins. She could almost see him, small and helpless, a flickering candle against an insatiable storm. But those hollow eyes of the lost children still haunted her, their pleas echoing in her mind like a relentless drum. Choose, the boy sneered again, his voice bending around her like a vice, squeezing the very breath from her lungs. The forest creaked, branches twisted almost rhythmically, echoing the madness swirling in her head. Her gaze flicked to the dark pit that had split open beneath her. It was filled with something shifting, something alive. The darkness seemed to pulse, writhing like a serpent, showcasing glimmers of wretched faces, twisted and contorted. She could see them, those shadows, the ones who beckoned, spider-like limbs reaching out toward her. I can't choose. She cried, her voice hoarse and strained, as if the trees absorbed it, devouring her desperation. There must be another way. But she felt the judgment of the forest pressing upon her soul, the wicked glee it derived from her torment. Mommy. Ethan's voice echoed once more, clearer now, soaked in urgency. She turned, frantic. The fate of countless children weighed heavily on her shoulders. Their wide, pitiful eyes stared into hers, as if they held the secrets of 1,000 sorrowful tales. If I choose you, Ethan, what will happen to them? She whispered, mind racing through unthinkable scenarios. Time is running out. Came the growl from the shadows, low and terrifying. It vibrated through her bones, igniting a primal fear she couldn't shake off. The darkness shifted, angry, as if it were alive and restless. Then, without warning, the ground beneath her feet erupted again. Roots shot up like serpents, snaking around her ankles, pulling her down, trying to drag her back into the earth. She stumbled, clawing at the soil, but the weight was unbearable. Choose. The boy shouted one last time, his grin now a snarl, features twisted in terrifying anticipation. In that moment, clarity struck like a lightning bolt. She remembered the stories, the warning that had always been there. The forest held power, power that thrived on despair and choice. It demanded sacrifice, and she was standing on the precipice. Enough. She yelled, her voice cutting through the chaos. I want to play your game. And in a burst of courage, she dove toward the pit, determined to confront whatever darkness awaited her rather than being pushed into a choice that would doom them all. The shadows writhed and hissed, the air thick with chaos. They lashed back at her, but she pushed through the agony, fingers diving into the soil as the grave truth clawed at her mind. Grasping what felt like a small, warm hand, she wasn't sure whose it was. But she held on tight, refusing to let go, to give in. In that moment of defiance, the earth trembled with a low rumble. A surge of cold air spiraled up from the depths of the pit, filled with agonized whispers. And just as she thought victory was within reach, she realized the ripple of power in her grasp had locked her into the game far deeper than she intended, and as the shadows surged forward, she found herself on the brink of an insidious revelation. What if Ethan wasn't the only one she had to save? With fear creeping deeper than ever, she faced the shadowy entity rising up behind her, wretched and monstrous. Do you dare defy us? Its voice boomed, and the forest itself seemed to hold its breath. Waiting. The choice wasn't just about saving a son or damned souls. It was bigger, darker, but what horror lay ahead? And would she have the strength to confront it all? The darkness roared around Sarah, a cacophony of whispers that twisted her thoughts. The shadows, once figments of her imagination, became palpable, clawing at her skin like icy fingers. The air thickened, heavy with a stench creeping from the pit, a miasma of decay that stung her nostrils. Ethan's voice grew more distant, drifting away like smoke. "Mommy, please." It was a plea that wrapped around her heart, but it wasn't just his voice that reached her now. The lost children echoed, their cries intertwining with the shadows, a haunting symphony of sorrow. "Save us, choose, save us, stop." She screamed. The words escaped her, raw and desperate. The shadows paused, the whispers faltering for an instant, and Sarah felt something give way inside her. Could they truly hear her? Was their hunger so insatiable that they needed more than just her son? Then, a sound broke through the thick air, a low, rumbling laugh from the entity that loomed behind her. "Oh, but you already know, dear Sarah. It is the very essence of survival that binds you all. You may pull your son from the depths, but there are others, so many others." Its words dripped with malice, slithering into her mind. "Time is a cruel mistress here, and your resolve will be tested." The shadows shifted again, forming shapes of faces she once recognized, twisted into expressions of despair. Friends, family, children, all trapped within their eternal torment. "Help us, Mommy," their voices implored, sending ice through her veins. They were part of the forest now, lost to its dark magic, just as the elders had whispered in fear. "No!" she cried, shaking her head as her hands dug deeper into the pit. She wasn't just fighting for Ethan anymore, she was battling for every innocence lost to that accursed place. Sweat slicked her brow, and she could feel the heat from the seeping darkness, wrapping tighter around her body like a shroud. "Join us," the shadowy entity crooned, its many eyes gleaming with a predatory shimmer. "Or choose. The choice is yours, Sarah. Join us in our oblivion or tear apart another's soul to save your own." As if sensing her hesitation, the pit surged with life, an eruption of anguished cries and sickening laughter mixing into a frenzy. They clawed at her sanity, presenting visions of horror she couldn't comprehend. Images of time spent with Ethan, happy moments torn apart by the razor's edge of dread. "Ethan, I am coming," she shouted, her voice hoarse but filled with fierce determination. She pulled with every ounce of strength, wrestling against the darkness. The warmth of the hand she'd grasped responded, tightening around hers, but the ground quaked ominously as shadows roared in furious rebellion. The entity's laugh echoed above her like thunder, vibrating through her bones. "You cannot escape your fate. Everyone you love will perish without your sacrifice." In an instant, the world warped around her, the voices crescendoing in a chaotic chorus. She felt the roots of agony wrapping around her, squeezing tighter with each heartbeat. The choice clawed at her, demanding submission. She could feel reality slipping, like a thread unraveling from a frayed garment. Every heartbeat screamed the urgency of a terrible decision fast approaching. "I want give in. I want choose a sacrifice." She screamed back, anger propelling her. The shadows twisted, their mouths opening wide, revealing grotesque rows of teeth, glistening in the ethereal light. "Then let us show you the depth of your mistakes," the entity hissed, its voice dripping with contempt. The shadows surged forward, a relentless wave of darkness, and Sarah braced herself for the onslaught, but suddenly, a piercing light shot through the chasm, cold and blinding. The shadows writhed in pain, retreating in a chaotic swirl. This was not just a vision, this was a message. And amidst the chaos, Sarah's heart raced with a chilling revelation. What if that light held the key? What if the very source of hope she needed was buried deeper than she could have imagined? As the shadows receded, she felt the hand in hers tighten, and she was filled with terror for what lay beyond the light. Was it salvation? Or a deeper darkness waiting to consume her whole? In her frantic heart, the question remained: was this glowing hope a beacon for comfort, or merely the underlying lure of more horror yet to unfold? As the tension pressed heavy upon her, she stepped closer to the flash, petting her fear into courage. What awaited her as she plunged into that mysterious light? Would she find Ethan, or something even darker? The light expanded around Sarah, illuminating her surroundings with an eerie glow that cut through the suffocating darkness. It flickered like a dying star, pulsating softly as though it resonated with her heartbeat. She squeezed Ethan's hand tighter, the warmth of his grip offering a momentary reprieve from the surrounding specters. "Stay with me, sweetheart," she shouted over the crashing whispers, her voice rising above the din. The pleas of the trapped children and her loved ones faded, replaced by a high-pitched ringing that pricked her ears. Something about the blinding light sapped the shadows, but it also unnerved her, whipping distrust through her veins. As Sarah ventured further into the glow, she felt the oppressive weight of the darkness lift slightly. Is this the way out? She pondered. But as soon as the thought crossed her mind, the light flickered ominously, transforming into jagged shapes that danced at the edges. She felt the tremor begin again beneath her feet, a warning tremble that sent a raw panic racing up her spine. Suddenly, the laughter returned, weaving through the glow with a mocking quality. "You're a fool to trust the light," the entity sneered, its voice throbbing like a heartbeat in her skull. "It offers no true salvation, it only leads to despair." The shadow surged back, encircling her like a predator, claws ready to snatch away her last glimmer of hope. But an instinct kicked in, raw and primal. She wouldn't allow that entity, or the shadows, to dictate her fate. "No!" she screamed, forcing her will against the void. "I choose to fight." With each word, she felt the light shudder positively. The air shimmered, wrapping around her in a cloak of energy. She willed herself forward, stepping into the heart of the brightness. It was a push against the sinister tide that churned around her, a desperate lunge toward freedom, yet, just as the shadows recoiled, a new sensation washed over her. Frigid fingers, like steel, grasped at her ankles, tugging at her resolve. From the recesses of the dark, faces reappeared, twisted with cruelty and despair. This time, she recognized them clearly, schoolmates from her childhood, each pleading with hollow eyes, their mouths forming silent screams. "Join us, Sarah," they whispered, a siren song that filled her with dread. "You'll never escape without us." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she pressed forward. She could sense the entity's fury boiling behind her, hot breath against her neck. "You think you're strong?" it roared, a thunderous objection lacing its words. "You're too weak to choose." With a surge of defiance, Sarah flung her free hand outward. "I will choose," she cried, the veil of the shadows shrinking before the power of her voice. "I choose love. I choose life." As she uttered the words, something extraordinary happened. Light erupted from her, a dazzling column that pierced the darkness. It was searing brighter than any star and more powerful than she could fathom. The laughter turned to wails of anguish as the shadows recoiled, their forms flickering and writhing, but that moment of victory hung in the balance. She looked back, locking eyes with Ethan, whose expression wavered between hope and fear. The pull of the shadows began to fade, yet she felt the light waver, as if it had to pick, between her freedom or her child. "Mommy! Don't leave!" Ethan shouted, his small voice filled with urgency that struck her like a physical blow. A heart-wrenching dilemma faced her: would the empowering light save Ethan while endangering her? Or would it swallow them both whole in its desperate grasp? What would she sacrifice to save him? In that moment, Sarah realized the true depth of the fight ahead, one that called upon the deepest fears and the heaviest weight of motherhood. Gripping Ethan's hand tighter, she steeled herself against the light and the dark that loomed, knowing the next moment would be a choice she could never take back. What awaited them on the other side? Would they find freedom or the ultimate horror hidden beneath the surface of everything they believed? The luminescence around Sarah erupted into a chaotic cacophony, flooding her senses and distorting reality. She could feel the shadows tightening their grip, clawing at her resolve, taunting her with promises of freedom tinged with despair. Mommy. Ethan's voice splintered through the turmoil, clinging to her like a lifeline. We have to go. But the light twisted, dazzling yet terrifying, casting grotesque shapes on the walls of their prison, shadows of children, once innocent, but now corrupted by darkness. Their whispers melded with the air, a symphony of anguish that clawed at her sanity. Stay, join us. No. You're not real. Sarah shouted. But doubt gnawed at her. They looked so familiar, those faces from her past. It broke her heart. A sudden sharp pain shot through her ankle, something cold and insidious gripped her from below. She stumbled, eyes wide as she started to fall. Ethan's hand slipped, just for a heartbeat, but that was enough. She gasped, pulling him close again. Hold on tight. As she strained against the pull, the darkness around them thickened. It was alive, hungry, filled with style and intimidation. Echoes of fear scampered up her spine like spiders, leaving icy traces in their wake. They tumbled, the world around them morphing into a swirling tempest of light and shadow, each flicker dragging them further apart. Can't you see? The entity sneered, its voice now a low growl. Your love will betray you. Their longing will drag you to the depths. Sarah's heart raced, pumping adrenaline into her veins. How could she fight something that toyed with her emotions so ruthlessly? I will not fall for your lies. She shouted defiantly, but the roar behind her chilled her blood. It was the embodiment of her dread, flourishing deep-rooted fears, ready to ensnare her within the web of hopelessness, yet, as she focused on Ethan's face, she could see the flicker of faith in his eyes, a connection that shimmered against the encroaching dark. Together, she whispered urgently. We can do this together. No. The sound vibrated through her bones. You can't protect him. In that instant, the ground quaked, a violent shudder that reverberated through the air like a warning siren. The pulse of the light dimmed, flickering erratically, and shadows lunged forward, merging into monstrous forms complete with gnarled hands and twisted faces, laughing, jeering, beckoning. She fought against it, digging deep within, screaming for the light to respond to her will. I choose to stand. I choose my son. Suddenly, the brightness exploded anew, forcing the shadows back. Ethan's small hand fitted perfectly into hers, their fingers intertwining, their hearts drumming a frantic rhythm that synchronized, beating as one. The glow swelled around them, it was no longer just her fight, it was theirs. Come back. The shadows shrieked, furious tendrils stretching as they shrank from the brilliance. You will join us, Sarah. We will not let you go. With a deafening roar, the air exploded around them. The force of the light felt like a shockwave, prying them from the clutches of despair. Yet even as they soared toward what seemed like safety, the sensation of being pulled apart lingered, a gnawing dread at the back of her mind. In the final moments before the darkness and light collided, she had to make a choice. The specters were relentless, clawing at her consciousness. Her deepest fears threatened to unravel the gulf between freedom and captivity, and then darkness overcame the light for a brief moment, a shroud thick with promises of power and eternal connections. Find us, the echoes called out, a chilling silence settling in. Sarah and Ethan fell into the light with a scream still trapped in their throats, and as they tumbled, something shifted in the atmosphere, revealing a new, terrifying truth. What lay beyond this confrontation was more than just a fight, it was a reckoning with the very fabric of their souls. As they landed in a new dark, a flicker of something ancient and malevolent watched from beyond, eager and waiting. Had they truly escaped? Or had they merely entered a new nightmare? The world settled around them with an oppressive weight, a heavy, clinging darkness that swallowed any remnants of light. Sarah's breath hitched in her throat, a suffocating grip that told her this was no safe haven. Ethan still clutched her hand, his small fingers a firm, yet fragile, anchor in this throbbing void. Mommy, where are we? His voice trembled, each word echoing off the unseen walls enclosing them. She could barely find the strength to respond, her heart racing as dread clawed at her gut. The ground was uneven, littered with jagged stones that jutted like teeth from a gaping maw. Shadows danced around them, twisting and curling, bestial figures looming just out of sight. A low, guttural chuckle resonated from within the depths, a mocking affirmation that they were very much not alone. Suddenly, a blinding spark flared before them. A figure emerged, cloaked in tattered rags that billowed as if caught in a cosmic wind. Its face was obscured, a mask of shifting shapes that morphed into the worst fears of anyone who dared look. Sarah instinctively pulled Ethan closer, her stomach nodding as it tilted its head, fixing them with an all-consuming gaze. "Welcome," it hissed, the tone dripping with malevolence. "You have arrived at the threshold. Only the worthy may pass." Ethan whimpered, both terrified and fascinated. The being stepped forward, and as it did, the air grew colder, crystallizing their breaths and sending chills skittering across Sarah's skin. "You must surrender what is precious to you or be consumed in agony." "No!" Sarah shouted, her voice rising in defiance. The thought of surrendering Ethan filled her with an ice-cold fear. "I want to let you take him." "Oh, it isn't me you need to convince," the being laughed, a low and mocking sound. "Your own heart teeters on the edge." As if summoned, the ground erupted, dark fingers reaching up around them, grasping, clawing. Forms of twisted shapes from her past rose to the surface, faces of people she loved, their smiles metamorphosed into grimacing masks. "Join us," they whispered, voices slithering into her mind. "Mommy! They're hurting you!" Ethan cried, his voice quivering as the shadows danced closer, each silhouette twisted further, morphing into her greatest insecurities, creeping against her mind like a fog. Every whisper, every memory, was an assault. "You failed them, no one loves you, you're alone, no." A surge of anger propelled her forward, fueled by the love she held for Ethan. "I refuse." The shadows recoiled slightly from the sudden burst of defiance. But they didn't vanish. Instead, they writhed with renewed fury, angering at her uprising. "Foolish woman! Can you save him?" The ground rumbled, shaking underfoot, echoing the depth of its threat. Ethan squeezed her hand tighter, his small fingers trembling. "Mommy, please, don't let them know. We will fight this together." Sarah vowed, summoning every ounce of strength left within her. She closed her eyes, visions of those she loved rushing to her mind, illuminating the darkness as fear turned to fury. "Stay back!" She shouted again, and the brightness erupted from her, forcing outward against the darkness. It surged, creating a storm of light that pushed back against those darkness-laden whispers, but the laughter did not cease. "You cannot escape. This is only the beginning." The very ground beneath them cracked, fissures opening wide, and they realized they were standing on the edge of something unfathomable. The shadows began to wriggle away, slipping into the cracks as the very fabric of their surroundings trembled. In their frantic struggle, Sarah felt a presence linger, a malignant gaze piercing through her resolve. As the shadows whispered their seductive promises, a deeper truth began to unfurl beneath. "You will pay for what you love," it intoned, leaving her with a gnawing sensation of dread. For just as freedom felt within reach, the looming question lingered like a dark cloud: what price would they have to pay to survive? Ethan's frightened eyes looked up at her, searching for unshakable reassurance, but in that moment of terror, uncertainty festered like an open wound. Would their combined light be enough? Or were they still ensnared in an unending nightmare? A chilling wind swept through the dark realm as Sarah tightened her grip around Ethan's hand, every moment pulsating with fear and urgency. The shadows writhed, creeping closer, their voices slithering with taunts and promises. "You cannot escape us. You'll always pay," they hissed, the air thickening like molasses. With every mocking whisper, Sarah felt her resolve wavering, her heart racing like a trapped bird. She could see the figures of loved ones trapped within the shadows, smiling faces twisted in pain. The accusation in their eyes stirred a deep-rooted angst, and dread clawed at her heart. "No. You don't own me," she screamed, the words cascading from her mouth with raw desperation. The unearthly being before them swirled, its form shifting violently with malicious intent. "You think you stand a chance?" It counters, slithering forward. Shadows coalesced, creeping around their legs like barbed wire. To save your son, you'll have to sacrifice your own essence. In that moment, the ground rumbled ominously beneath them, the earth quaking at the becoming weight of her choices. The walls of darkness pulsed, their rhythmic breathing laced with promises of freedom but muddied by the taste of despair. "Mommy!" Ethan cried, small eyes wide with terror. He shifted closer, and Sarah could see the flicker of hope still alive within him. "I want to let them take you. They don't own us." Taking a step back, Sarah surveyed their nightmare-deformed illusions twisted by the forest's deception, vying for her own collapse. "I choose to protect him," she declared, holding onto Ethan as shadows swirled around them, slashing at her resolve. "I will not let darkness claim us." The shadows hissed but recoiled slightly. A spark ignited deep within her, and in that moment, a pulse of warmth surged through their connection. She envisioned all of their laughter and joy, the highs and lows that molded their lives. It filled her with determination. "Ethan!" she shouted, her voice firm. "You are my light. Together we are strong." With those words, she stepped forward into the spinning darkness, a tandem of strength anchoring her to Ethan's pure essence. The shadows shrieked, furious at her defiance, and clawed at her skin, but Sarah felt the warmth radiating from her heart. "Now!" she cried, pulling Ethan toward the darkness that hungered to devour them. The shadows lunged, but they were drawn into a vortex of shimmering light, one born from the very essence of love, shielded by the fears they faced together. A wave surged forth from her core, blasting back the weight of despair. The darkness screamed, convulsing under the brilliance that filled their world, illuminating each terrified face behind the veil. "This isn't just about us," she yelled, voice rising with fury. "You will not break us." In her mind's eye, she saw every child yearning for liberation, every shadow bound to their fate. With every pulse, the barrier of light grew stronger as it resonated with their cries, stretching to encompass the lost souls. "Join us." The darkness beckoned, but the shadows began to splinter, pulling at their own essence, weakened by the truth of unity and hope that surrounded Sarah and Ethan. "Together!" they shouted, hands still clasped, the very foundation of rebellion born anew. Each loving thought conjured strength, each memory fought against the cold grasp of despair. With one final surge, the light erupted, a bright beacon tearing through the shadowy fog surrounding and engulfing them until the whispers faded into nothingness. As the light consumed her, she felt nothing but liberation washing over her like a cleansing rain. The darkness recoiled, thrashing one last time against the brilliance of their combined spirit before it dissipated, drowned in the clarion call of love and hope. And then silence. The world shifted, colors bursting forth like a sunrise after an endless night. Sarah and Ethan emerged on the other side, lost children now free, spirits unchained. One by one, the faces behind the shadows began to materialize, smiling softly in gratitude, the weight of their anguish lifted. They had escaped. The dark woods behind them faded into the distance, shadows retreating as the last remnants of fear evaporated. But it wasn't over. The ancient trees still whispered, their secrets woven into the fabric of the earth as if reminding them never to forget what they had faced. In that moment, Sarah knelt down, clutching Ethan tightly to her chest, the warm beat of his heart reassuring her own. "I will always protect you," she murmured, tears of relief streaming down her face. "No matter what darkness comes our way." And as the sun cast golden rays upon them, illuminating their path ahead, a promise shimmered within the light. They had emerged from the threshold, but the bond forged in adversity would carry them through whatever lay beyond. Ethan lifted his gaze, his small eyes glimmering with wonder. "Did we win, Mommy?" "Yes, sweetheart," she answered, her smile genuine and full of hope. "Together, we can face anything." With that, they turned toward the bright horizon, ready to carve out a life anew, knowing that love's light would guide them through the unknown. You need to subscribe now, so you don't miss out on more heart-pounding stories. Smash that like button now and help feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this incredible ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this thrilling conclusion. Your support truly makes all the difference.